Celestial Refugees Part 2. The reality of their dwindling oxygen supply was like a shadow looming over the crew of the USS Pioneer. Gathered in the ship's common area, which had been transformed into an impromptu meeting room, each member was acutely aware of the ticking clock. The air, though still breathable, carried a hint of staleness, a subtle reminder of their precarious situation. Captain Elara Tran stood at the head of the room, her posture upright, yet her eyes betrayed the burden of leadership weighing on her. The dim lighting of the space cast soft shadows across her face, accentuating the seriousness etched into her features. Around her, the rest of the crew sat in a semicircle, their expressions a mix of anxiety and resolve. The common area, usually a place of relaxation and camaraderie, now felt like the setting for a momentous decision. Elara cleared her throat, drawing the crew's attention. "We don't have much time," she began, her voice carrying a blend of authority and urgency. "Our oxygen situation is critical, and we need a solution now." She paused, looking at each of her crew members in turn, ensuring she had their full attention. "Our best bet is the hostile base," she continued, her tone steady, yet an undercurrent of uncertainty crept into her voice. "It's a risk, I won't deny that. But they have the resources we need to survive and repair the ship." Her gaze lingered on the star map displayed on the wall, showing their current trajectory and the blinking icon representing the hostile base. "I've considered all our options, and while the unknown desert planet might seem safer, it's a gamble. We don't know what we'll find there, or if it will offer us any real chance of survival." She turned back to face her crew, her eyes seeking theirs. "I know I'm asking you to take a leap into the unknown. But sometimes, leadership is about making the hard choices, even when every option seems like a bad one." The room was silent for a moment, the weight of her words hanging in the air. Elara's proposal was bold, maybe even bordering on reckless, but it was grounded in the stark reality of their situation. They needed resources, they needed repairs, and time was not on their side. Sergeant Alexei Ivanov, who had been quietly listening, shifted in his seat, the servos in his cybernetic arm emitting a software, barely audible yet distinct in the tense silence. The dim light of the room glinted off the metallic limb, a stark reminder of his battle-hardened past and the advanced technology that had become a part of him. He stood up, his height and presence commanding attention. "Captain, with all due respect," he began, his voice carrying a gravitas born of experience, "I've seen what hostile means in the depths of space." His eyes, hardened by years of military service, met Elara's with a resolute gaze. "Our chances are better on the desert planet. It's an unknown, yes, but it offers us a chance to land, conserve what resources we have left, and send a distress signal from there." His stance was unwavering, embodying a soldier's strategic thinking, always assessing risks and seeking to minimize them. "We know nothing about the base's occupants, their capabilities, or their intentions. Approaching them, especially in our current state, is a significant risk." As Alexei sat back down, the room was filled with a contemplative silence. His argument had struck a chord, especially with Leo Rodriguez, who had been staring at his hands, still visibly shaken from the earlier ordeal. Leo looked up, his expression one of cautious agreement. "He's got a point," he said, his voice unsteady but growing in confidence. "A base that's known to be hostile, that's not just a gamble, it's potentially walking into an ambush. We have no idea what kind of firepower or defenses they have." He leaned forward, his hands clasped together as if to gather his thoughts. "The desert planet might not offer much, but it gives us something crucial: time. Time to think, to plan, and to figure out our next move without the immediate threat of an armed confrontation." His eyes, usually full of a mechanic's practicality and resolve, now reflected a deeper understanding of their predicament. "We're engineers, scientists, explorers, not soldiers. Our strength lies in being able to adapt and solve problems, not in direct confrontation. The crew absorbed Leo's words, the decision before them growing ever more complex. Elara's plan offered a direct solution but at a potentially high risk. Alexei and Leo's alternative seemed safer but came with its own set of uncertainties. The debate within the confines of the Pioneer's common area grew more heated, mirroring the urgency of their situation. Captain Elara Tran, standing firmly, reasserted her stance. "I understand the risks," she acknowledged, her voice ringing with a mixture of determination and desperation. "But time isn't a luxury we have. The hostile base may be dangerous, but it's also our quickest shot at getting the resources and repairs we desperately need." Her hands clenched slightly, betraying her inner tension. "If we land on the desert planet, yes, we might buy ourselves some time, but then what? We could be stranded, with no guarantee of rescue. The base, despite its risks, could offer immediate solutions." Elara paced a few steps, her eyes scanning the faces of her crew. "I didn't make this decision lightly. But as your captain, it's my job to consider all our survival chances. And right now, that base might be our only real chance." Sergeant Alexei Ivanov countered with equal fervor, his cybernetic arm making a soft hissing sound as he gestured emphatically. "And what if they see us as a threat and decide to attack? We're barely holding together as it is. Approaching a known hostile force in this condition is like walking into a lion's den covered in steak." His tone was unwavering, the voice of someone who had faced danger and understood its many faces. "On the desert planet, we might be able to stabilize, assess our situation, and work on a long-term plan. It's a risk, yes, but it's a calculated one. And it keeps us away from immediate danger." The two leaders, each with their own valid perspectives, created an atmosphere charged with tension. The rest of the crew looked on, torn between the immediate promise of resources and the potential safety of the desert planet. Dr. Nia Patel, who had been listening intently, finally spoke, her voice a calm contrast to the heated discussion. "Both options have risks, but we need to think about where we stand the best chance of maintaining control over our situation. On the desert planet, we're in charge of our fate. At the base, we're at the mercy of others." The debate continued, with each argument being weighed and considered. Elara's emphasis on the dire need for immediate resources and repairs clashed with Alexei's focus on the potential perils of facing an unknown and possibly hostile enemy in their weakened state. The decision that lay before them was akin to balancing on a knife edge. One wrong move could spell disaster for the entire crew. The air was thick with unspoken fears and the heavy responsibility of the choice they had to make. Recognizing the deadlock, Captain Elara Tran knew that a unilateral decision in such a critical moment could breed resentment and undermine the unity they desperately needed. She took a deep breath, her gaze sweeping over her crew, each member caught in their own tumult of thoughts and fears. "We're in this together," she said solemnly, her voice resonating with a leadership that sought not only to command but to unify. "This decision affects all of us. So, let's decide as a crew. We'll put it to a vote." The tension in the room shifted, now tinged with the gravity of collective responsibility. The crew members exchanged glances, the weight of the decision settling upon them all. Elara continued, "Those in favor of heading to the hostile base, raise your hand." There was a brief, heavy silence. Elara raised her hand, her decision firm despite the uncertainty that clouded the future. She looked around, but no other hand joined hers. "Now, those in favor of landing on the desert planet, please raise your hand." Sergeant Alexei Ivanov was the first, his cybernetic arm raised without hesitation, his decision clear in his resolute expression. Leo Rodriguez followed, his hand lifting slowly, his eyes reflecting the gravity of his choice. Dr. Nia Patel, after a moment of contemplation, also raised her hand, her resolve firm. The vote was unanimous, aside from Elara. She let out a breath she didn't realize she was holding and nodded in acceptance. The desert planet it is, she conceded, her voice steady despite the outcome opposing her judgment. We'll make preparations for landing. There was a sense of relief mixed with apprehension in the air. The decision had been made, but the journey ahead was fraught with unknowns. Yet, in that moment, the crew of the USS Pioneer found strength in their unity, in the shared commitment to face whatever challenges lay ahead on the desert planet. Elara took one last look at the 3D map, the blinking icon of the desert planet now their chosen destination. Let's get to work, she said, the commander once again taking charge, ready to lead her crew into the next chapter of their uncertain journey.